Sponsored by Stand Up to All Hate. Call a timeout against hate.
You know, I've been in some of these Twitter fights before. And I think the change my change over the last, when did we come into Twitter, was probably 2011, right? 2011. So in the last 13 years, I think 2010 was when Schefter, when Twitter became a thing. 2011 was when I joined then Twitter, now X. So I've been in plenty of these before. I think the difference is two or threefold. Okay, one is that, in the past, when you tweet something you don't like the way it comes out, you just take it down, right? But somehow we've gotten into this screenshot gotcha sort of thing, where if you take it down, now it's like, ooh, we found you tweeting something. When you're allowed to erase something if you I wish I would have reworded that. Second thing is, normally, I would say, previous to the last maybe 5 years, I wouldn't have been able to recognize, even in my own tweets, the language that became incendiary to lead to a flammable situation. And the third thing is that, I'm not really super defensive. But I now realize why others are. Right? So, Buyer, I'm sure Buyer's active on social media. I know all you guys are. So basically, here's what happened. Yesterday, Dan Buyer, in I think his second hour update, said that in addition to Norfolk State, who reportedly has interviewed Mike Vick to be their next head football coach, Sacramento State is now interested. Matter of fact, Adam Schefter's tweet was that, they're pursuing him like it might happen, and he said that Sacramento State had $50 million in NIL. $50 million in NIL. Now, again, this is the problem with social media, is that if it's not in a video or long form, or it's not on the radio as it is now, you say $50 million, you're like, wait, it felt like Adam Schefter was saying they have $50 million to spend on football players next year. If that were the case, that would give them the deepest pool of NIL money of any team in the country by about 2.5 times. Right, 2.5 times. It doesn't mean that Texas and Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama don't have bigger budgets. They do. But the pool of money for NIL this past year, reportedly, and again, they have tax returns going back to last year, where Ohio State, I think, was like at the 13, 14 million, and this year it's supposed to be $20 million. So when you say they have $50 million in NIL, those of us who are in the profession, I'm in the profession as a men's head basketball coach, I can tell you that number is preposterous. That it's simply somebody trying to inflate it. But you have to you have to go wait, $50 million in NIL? Which they would probably say, yeah, we have $50 million committed if the football program goes, and some of that will be broken off into NIL. And, oh, yeah, by the way, next year, that money can come from in-house. What people should understand, that those of us, again, in the business understand, is there's a house settlement. Once the settlement happens, schools, all these schools, we owe money for this settlement that will go directly to former athletes, former student athletes, for compensation for their name, image, and likeness for the past 20 years in a class action lawsuit. So no one is operating as if there's not going to be money spent just to make this big past lawsuit go away. Then you have the realities of, if you move from FCS to FBS, you need a new stadium, you need a new coaching staff, okay? You need all the different things it takes that require money. And $50 million actually goes really, really fast, and you never get that amount to the players. So there's room for a calmer discussion where you just go, yeah, that number seems off, or that number seems high. Instead, my response was something along the Jesus Shefty, right? Need to edit when an agent sends you a sends you a text, there's 0.0% chance Sac State has $50 million in NIL. To which he first defended it and said that there's something called the Sac 12, which is raising money to get Sac State into the Pac 12. And that they've reported to have $50 million in pledges. And then he came after me about my basketball program and said, Jesus, Doug, you're lost 7 in a row. You're in last place in the Horizon League. So he went top rope. Byer, I haven't talked to you today. What are your thoughts on the Twitter beef?
Yeah, I mean, it was something. It was everywhere. I didn't love your tone, like, to Adam Schefter in the initial tweet.
Yep.
I think it's more of a group text sort of thing. Like,
yeah.
Guys, get a load of this. This is completely off base. None of this is true. So I thought the wording of it was a little harsh, even if you were correct in what you were saying.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then, the comeback leaves the comeback from Schefter, because of how you worded it, leaves you open to taking that sort of blow with the screenshot. And then it just absolutely took off from there. I do think that there's a lesson to be learned in it. And sometimes it isn't. In this case, it wasn't more important to be right. It was just of like how it was carried on. Like, if you would have said this is incorrect, they don't have that much money. But I think it was the shot of the agent, because that's also
there's no question.
There's
no question, because that's how by and large he gets that information. It's not the agent probably not involved in this one, but it's more the point of insiders, and you and I know lots of them. And Schefter's really good at NFL stuff. Part of it is also like Schefter's trying to say he could do the basketball stuff, which is like, again, no, if you haven't been in a business, your ability to understand that business is made really, really difficult. Really difficult. And so you have to, like, here's what's hard about his job. I know there's somebody else who's an NFL insider. I won't name names but it's everything he does is in the positive in regards to the player. Regards to the player. And all he does is inflate the values of the players' opinions. And that's clearly where he gets his stuff. And it's just copy and paste of whatever somebody's agent, whatever player sends him, that's what he goes with. I think Schefter generally does a much better job of just, here's what it is, here's what's going to happen. In that case, he was literally discussing something that either he didn't have any desire to look into, he might have been doing somebody a favor. It might have been, helping encourage Mike Vick. Here's why you should take the job.
Yeah.
We got $50 million in cash right on hand. But it's not true. And I completely understand my tone was pretty negative there. I got it. I didn't think I went as personal as he went.
That's an interesting take, because I think that Schefter thinks of, whether Adam Schefter did or didn't do it, the fact that as an insider, there's a perception that he would just copy and paste an agent thing. I think he thought that was a direct shot at him. And in fact, within the last couple of weeks, John Heyman, who covers Major League Baseball, got into it with a WFAN host who had said that Heyman was kind of doing the same thing with Scott Boras. And Heyman was completely offended, cut off their interview, wouldn't go on with the host again. So it's one of those sore spots, I guess, if you will, if you're in that profession. Like, you could say what you want, but don't say that. And I think that's probably how Schefter felt in that scenario. Fair enough. He felt he could take that shot at you.
Yeah. And then, Twitter starts piling on and whatever. For the record, okay, I know my record. I know what our record is here. Doesn't feel good. But it's year one. It's not a one-year plan. And we'll get it right. It just takes time, and we got to figure out how to win. We play tomorrow. Play a really good team tomorrow. That again, like, we're playing our first Division II opponent, but they're Michigan Tech. They just beat the number 3 Division II team in the country. They're good, and we got to learn how to win. So it'll be something. But eventually, we'll get it right, and we'll keep the receipts, and we'll make sure everybody remembers that we remember. Yes, Jay Stu.
Hey, just for the record, for our listeners here, I reached out to Adam today to see if he'd come on and just talk about this, maybe bury the hatchet, and he politely declined. And I've been doing this long enough to know the difference between a polite decline and an FU decline, and it was definitely polite with a happy holidays. Probably best, but we wanted to give him a chance to come on.
Yep. So, and to anybody who thinks when I was at ESPN we would have had beef, like, no, have no beef with Shefty. It was just kind of an offhanded, flippant. I'd have a bit of a day, and I get to my little sarcastic ways, and I get why he'd be pissy. I just didn't think it was to that level.
Sponsored by Stand Up to All Hate. Call a timeout against hate.